welcome to today's lesson. Today's lesson is part of the Biology Trilogy AQA scheme of work. We're going to be looking at feeding relationships today. So what are we learning today? We're learning about predator-prey relationships, and there's actually a cycle between predator populations and prey populations, and we're going to be investigating that today. Before we get started, let's do some retrieval practice, okay? So here you'll be able to see 6 questions based on recent lessons that you have been covering, recent topics. So what I want you to do is pause the video, have a go at answering these 6 questions. Okay, pause now. Excellent, well done. So hopefully you've had a little go. If you have struggled with any of these, make sure you have a go at looking at some of the other videos to make sure you can go through some of this content, okay? So pause the video, make sure you have had a go at it, and then I'll just show you the answers in a second. Okay, so you should be able to see the answers now, you can compare them. It's really important that you have a go at that retrieval practice at the beginning of the lesson. So what we're going into today, so what we're looking at today is this, and this is the AQA specification. So I'm going to go through a little bit about what we're investigating, what we're looking at throughout this lesson. So a lot of it is terminology. So we're going to be talking about producers, consumers, predator, prey, and we're just making sure that we understand all of that key terminology. Another part is we're looking at feeding relationships. So what happens between the prey and the predator. So what happens to their population numbers? So again, another word is population numbers. We need to know what population means. Okay, and then we're going to be interpreting graphs and looking at what happens with predator populations and prey populations. Okay, so have a little look at the specification. Pause the video if you like and have a little look. Okay, so I would like you to be able to describe the effects that a predator has on a prey population and explain that and use graphs in your explanation. Use data to prove your points. Okay, so what is a predator and prey populations? Well, first of all, we've got quite a lot of terminology to get through. So let's just have a little look at a simple food chain. Okay, so this takes you back to previous stuff that you've done before, previous learning. So let's just look at a simple food chain. So let's have a leaf, my awesome drawing, a leaf, and here's my caterpillar. Okay, so this is our food chain. Okay, so our caterpillar eats our leaf, our bird eats our caterpillar, our cat eats our bird. So which way do the arrows go in the food chain? So do they go from leaf to caterpillar, or do they go from caterpillar to leaf? They actually go this way. They go from leaf to caterpillar, caterpillar to bird, bird to cat. And why do they do that? Because those arrows show the flow of energy. Okay, so that's our first thing to remember about food chains, what the arrows show, the flow of energy. Because we're talking about energy throughout this, how the energy is transferred from the producer. So the producer is the plant. It produces its own energy. How does it make its own energy? From photosynthesis. So it makes its own energy in photosynthesis, taking the energy from light, taking carbon dioxide in and water from its roots and turning that into glucose, oxygen, and making its own energy through respiration. Okay, so our plant is called a producer. Now, the animal that eats a producer is called a consumer. Now, if the first one that eats a producer is called a primary consumer, because it's the first one, it's the primary consumer, it eats the producer, okay? It's also a herbivore, so another term for us to know, because it eats a plant. Now, it could be an omnivore, and don't forget, omnivores, they eat plants, but they also eat animals as well, okay? Our bird, on the other hand, is also a consumer because it doesn't make its own energy, it eats something else, it's a consumer, but it doesn't eat the plant, it eats the primary consumer, so therefore it's a secondary consumer. Now you might have guessed, our cat is also a consumer, but it's a tertiary consumer because the third in the line. Now if you had a fourth one, that would be a quaternary consumer. Okay, so primary consumer, secondary consumer, and a tertiary consumer. Now our bird and our cats are both carnivores. because they eat meat, don't they? Okay, another word we've got to be aware of is predator and prey. So we're talking about predator and prey throughout the rest of the lesson, so let's just be really clear that we know what they mean. So predator eats a prey. So in this example, our cat is a predator, our bird is a prey, okay? But what happens when the bird eats a caterpillar? The caterpillar is the prey and the bird becomes the predator. You see how the relationship changes depending on what is eating what and what we're discussing. Okay, so if I was talking about caterpillars and birds, I would talk about the bird being a predator and I'd talk about the caterpillar being a prey. Whereas if I'm talking about the cat and the bird is the prey and the cat is the predator. So it changes depending on the relationship we're talking about. Okay, so what we're going to be looking at a lot more today is predator and prey relationships. So I'm going to talk a bit about foxes and rabbits. So predator eats a prey, okay? So foxes hunt rabbits, okay? So the foxes are the predator, the rabbits are the prey. They're what they feed on, okay? Now, preys tend to be really well adapted to camouflage, to hide away from predators, okay? They don't have very sharp teeth because they often are herbivores. Not always, remember we're talking about our bird is a predator and a prey, depending on what it is, but they often don't have as many adaptations. So I want you to think back to your lesson on adaptations, about what kind of adaptations a prey would have. It would want to hide, it would want to run fast, whereas a predator would also want to run fast, but it would want to hunt, good scent, the way that their eyes are, the position of their eyes, okay, teeth, claws, all of these things are adaptations so they can catch and kill their food. Okay, so let's have a little look at the prey populations. So this here is a graph of the prey populations. You'll notice that it goes up and down. The population, the number of rabbits in a certain area, so a population is about the number of animals of that species in a certain area, the population rises and falls. And it's cyclical, you'll notice it goes up and down, up and down. So why does that happen? Well, it happens for lots of reasons. One could be seasons. So in the winter there's less food to eat and they hibernate. Less food to eat, so their numbers will decrease. Whereas in the spring, there's lots more baby rabbits born, so their population will increase. So they'll be able to find more mates. But also, this is in relationship to what? Hunting them. Okay, so if there's lots of foxes around, their populations will go down. Okay, now when their population goes down, and there isn't very many rabbits, what will that do to the fox's population? I want you to start thinking about that. Okay, so don't forget we talked about competition very recently in one of your lessons, okay? So think about what else does an animal need. It doesn't just, we're not just talking about the rabbits and the foxes relationship. Think about also they need about mates, they need somewhere to live, they need a food source, okay? Habitats, okay. So what about our predator? So in our case here it's a fox population. Again, you'll see the cyclic up and down, the increase and decrease of the population. Very, very similar to the rabbit. Now, why is that? Because just like the rabbit, it also is competing for the same things, habitats, mates, etc. But it's dependent on its food source. And the food source for our fox in this example is the rabbits. So if the rabbit population decreases, there's less food source for our foxes. So our foxes population will also decrease. They'll start to die out because there won't be enough rabbits to feed so that they can mate and produce more baby foxes. Okay, so their population rises and falls, but it rises and falls not exactly at the same time as the rabbits, but just slightly after. There's a little lag, okay, and that is because, don't forget, that it'll take time for them to eat all those baby rabbits and stuff, but also to mate and produce more rabbits. There's just slightly afterwards. Okay, so think about our food chain, think about how they relate to each other, okay. Don't forget though, most animals don't live in just a single food chain. They live in a food web within their habitat, okay, within their ecosystem, and there'll be more than one food source for it, okay. But in this example, we're just talking about one relationship between that predator and that prey, that one predator and prey. Okay, so we're going to look now at an example. Okay, so we're going to look at an example here and we're going to talk a bit more about it. Now we've put both the predator and prey on the same graph. Okay, so we can see the prey population increases. So I'll just do this. So we can see our prey population increases here. Okay, and Then just afterwards, we can see our predator population increase. Why would our predator population increase after the prey population increase? Because there's more food source. There's more food source, they're more likely to mate, they're more likely to produce more foxes, okay? So there's more food sources. Okay, more food sources, they're more likely to mate, more foxes. Okay, now what about our after that happens? So here we've now got our predator population as increase, is high, okay? There's lots of predator, what are they gonna do? They're gonna eat a lot of the prey. So what happens is you see this prey population really decrease, okay? So we see the prey population decrease. And why is that prey population decreasing? It's decreasing because all the predators are eating it. Now, there's not many of that prey left. So there's not very many rabbits left. So it's really low. So we've got a low population of rabbits. So what happens next? Our predator has no food source. So what will happen to our numbers, our population of our predator, our population of our foxes? They will then decrease. So we can see that happening next. Our foxes decrease, our population of foxes decrease. And then the cycle starts again because our population of predators decrease. Then there's more opportunity for our rabbits to mate. There's less hunting taking place. So there's more likely that there's going to be an increase in population in rabbits. So that population in rabbits goes up. Now we've got a greater food source, so our population in foxes just behind it increases because there's more food source, so they will make more foxes and they've got more food source so they can survive, but then they'll start eating all the prey again. So then the prey population will go down and we get that cyclic change. So now we're going to have a little look at an exam question that goes through all what we've talked about. So, some small mites feed on the leaves of orange plants. Larger mites feed on the smaller mites. What do we call animals like the large mite which eat off other animals like the smaller mite? So if something eats something else, it is a predator. Now, here we go. We've got a predator population graph. We can see it straight away. We've got the number of mites on one side. We've got this small mite in our dotted line, whereas our large mites are in that solid line. And we've got the weeks going along the bottom. So the graph shows how the number of these mites change over a period of time. What happens to the number of large mites 1 week after the number of small mites decrease? So first of all, we need to find a place on the graph where the small mites decrease. So the small mites are the dotted lines, they decrease here. Great. Okay, so we need 1 week afterwards. So what happens to the number of large mites 1 week after the small mites decrease? So if they decrease here we go. 1 week later, the large mites, look what's happened here. The large mites population has decreased. Now, why has their population decreased? So their population has decreased because there's less food source. So there's less food source for it to eat. So the population has decreased because there's less food, the food source being the small mites, for them to eat, okay? Now the marks are there. Less food for 1 mark to eat, that's the second mark. 3 marks in total, done. Okay, so what happens to the number of small mites as the number of large mites increase? Now this is slightly different to what we know, so let's have a little look at it. So here we can see our small mites are increasing here as the number of large mites are increasing. Both of them are increasing. So why is that happening? Now don't forget we said that a food chain isn't an isolated system, that actually would be part of a food web. So one assumes that maybe there is another food source. That the large mites and the small mites are breeding. And that's it. So just to finish up, there's another question on the worksheet if you're following along. So you can have a go at that, which is again all about predator-prey relationships. So we've gone through one of the questions on the worksheet that accompanies this lesson. There's another one for you to have a go at independently to finish the lesson. Okay, if this video has been helpful, please give it a like so I know that this is the kind of thing that will help you get along.